Okay, here we are, February the 18th, 2022, at Jockey Ridge, Dune area, here on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. It is a cold, blistery Friday afternoon. So here we are. On this cold day on the Outer Banks of North Carolina, we're visiting home to the tallest living sand dune system on the Atlantic coast. Now, why would they say living sand dune system? Well, with the wind and the hurricane and the storms, these sand dunes have a tendency to kind of move around. Now, as we're walking out to the sand dune system, you can see the trees and some of this grass help hold the sand in position. But as we get out to the main dune system, you can see that that fierce wind can move that sand around. So here we are, somewhat of a walk to get to the main sand dunes. And of course, we're on the Outer Banks. We're between the Atlantic Ocean and Rhode Island Sound, or Roanoke Sound. So we're surrounded by water on both sides. And you can see kind of the effect of the wind there as it whips that sand. Here the sand is kind of captured by the trees and the grass. Here we're making our way. There we see one of the smaller dunes. Now this is February, so it is cold. It is windy. And of course this is North Carolina. We don't get a lot of snow, but certainly the rain and the cool weather. So here we're hiking up, trying to get to a high point so we can overlook the dune system. So here we are. Quite fascinating. Now, it's an ideal location for flying kites and walking and enjoying the sunsets. And certainly, if you have a kite, you want to have a strong kite, a high wind kite, because the wind speed is probably 15 miles per hour minimum. It is pretty consistent, so this would be a good place to fly a kite. Now, it also has hang gliding. And in a moment, we'll see some hang gliders that are just being stored. Now, I think hang gliding on this dune system might be somewhat hazardous, so registration is required. It is a hallmark activity at the park, and a private concession air offers lessons. Now there, as we look out there, we see the Sound on one side and the Atlantic Ocean on the other. There we see the effect on the wind, on the sand, and that's pretty hard. If you came crashing down while hang gliding, that would be rather painful. So here we go. Now, of course, the wind has been working on the sand area, so we don't see a lot of tracks. And this park, there's no dune buggies or motorcycles. There we go. Now, these are the hang gliders. I don't think I would want to do that. Okay, here we're returning from the dunes back to the parking area. And here we're kind of sheltered from the wind, and I think the wind has even died down somewhat. But certainly interesting. You can see that there are these evergreen trees that are growing out of the sand, and we see the grass. But it helps to hold the sand down, I'm sure. Now, one thing I need to mention here in North Carolina, this is the home where the Wright brothers built and tested their first successful aircraft, and we're not far from Kill Devil Hills. So there we see our trip to North Carolina.